We're holding my Perek Nun Gimel. The last Perek in Tanya. And we're middle of a three Perek, a unit of three Prakim. We started a Perek Nun Aleph. Nun Aleph and Beis Nun Gimel is one idea. We started Perek Nun Aleph. The Alter Rebbe asked, we have to understand what is the idea of Hashuras Hashchina. We say that in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, there was Hashuras Hashchina. What does that mean? What does it mean that there's Hashuras Hashchina? We know that the Eibishter is everywhere, and less Asar Pani Minei. There's no place that's empty of Hashem. So what does it mean that the Shechina is present in one place more than the other? Okay, and as we said, the question is not only about the Kodesh HaKadoshim, although that's the primary place of Hashuras Hashchina in this world, but we know many times the Chazal talk about Shechina Shriya. The Shekhinah is present. What does that mean? The Shekhinah is present. Hashem is everywhere. So we are well on the way to answering our question, because we already understand that although Hashem is everywhere, the Shekhinah refers specifically to Malchus da Atzilus. The Shekhinah refers to the energy which emanates from Hashem in order to give life and chayis and vitality to all the worlds. So when we talk about the Shekhinah, we're talking about a very specific energy. We're not talking about Hashem. Hashem is everywhere. But as we learned that in every single world, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of that world, which is the Chabad, the intellect of that world, the Chachma Bin Adas of that world, the Torah of that world, so there you have the Shekhinah. So as we learned in previous weeks, in every single world, you have a Kodesh HaKadoshim. And in every single world, the Shekhinah of the world above it enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and through that entire world receives its energy. So you have the primary Shekhinah is in Atzilus, is Malchus of Atzilus. So Malchus of Atzilus enters the world of Bria into the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Bria. What is the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Bria? Is the Torah of Bria, because as we learned, the Torah is the Levush. The Torah is the garment through which the Shekhinah can express itself, because the Shekhinah itself is too high for a world, so it has to enter the Torah. And then it goes through the world of Bria, and then Malchus of the world of Bria enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Yitzira, and then Malchus of Yitzira enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the world of Asiya. Asiya, the world of Asiya is the spiritual world, which is the source of our world. And then you would think that the Malchus of the world of Asiya enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim of our physical world of Olam Haza Hagashmi, also known as Olam HaAsiya Hagashmi. Dr. Rebbe is going to explain that that's not the case. Even though you would think that the Shekhinah that enters this world is the lowest level of Shekhinah because it filters through all the worlds, Dr. Rebbe is going to say, in fact, the Shekhinah that was Sheira in the Bayis Rishon, when the Ard and the Luchas was there, was higher than the Shekhinah that was Sheira in the higher worlds.
How's that possible?
How's that possible?
Because it's like you have Simpson, you have to go gradually in order to come down to Olam Asiya, that the energy should be converted to Gashmi. This is like the last stop.
Right.
It has to be compressed.
It seems illogical. It would seem that the lower it gets, the Shekhinah gets lower and lower until it enters this physical world. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, that the Shekhinah that was in the Beis Hamikdash was higher than the Shekhinah that was present in the higher worlds, which, by the way, goes hand in hand with one of the major premises of Tanya, which is the idea of Dira B'Tachtoinim, that although there are many worlds, but ultimately the Tachlis and the Kavana is Dafke in this world, and therefore the Eibishter wants there should be Gili Elokus in this world more so than any other world. And let's learn inside how this works.
Other worlds for? What is the purpose of the other worlds if the Tachlis was over here and you don't need the other worlds to contain the infinite energy?
That's a great question.
So
that's a question you should have asked. You should ask that 20 prakim ago when we first learned it, 15 prakim ago.
I don't remember. It's an Einfeld. My question is like on spur of the moment. So.
And in short, the answer to that question is that every single world represents a madreg in kedusha. This world naturally has no kedusha in it, and every single time. If you remember in the earlier prakim, we said that when we do a mitzvah with this type of ava, then it's the world of Bria. If you do a mitzvah with this type of ava that has the wings and it flies up to the world of Yitzira. Hashem created all the levels of kedusha of the higher worlds, all so that we should be able to bring them down here through our avodah into this world. But that's only in short. We're not going there right now because it's not the topic for discussion.
Let's go to the
Perek Nun Gimel inside. V'hine, K'shehaya Bayis Rishon Kayim, when the first Beis Hamikdash was in existence, Shebay Haya Ha'aron V'Haluches, in the first Beis Hamikdash there was the Aron and the Luches, the Beis Kodesh Kadashim, the chamber of the Kodesh Kadashim. We know that in the second Beis Hamikdash the Aron wasn't there. There were 5 things that were missing in the second Beis Hamikdash, and one of them was the Aron, because Yeshayahu HaMelech, he hid the Aron. Shlomo HaMelech foresaw that the Beis Hamikdash would be destroyed. He did not want that the Aron should be taken captive or destroyed. So he built, he in the Har HaBayis, under the Beis Hamikdash, he created subterranean tunnels, labyrinths. I don't know how you pronounce that. Labyrinth, but how do you say that in plural? Labyrinths, okay. And a very complicated maze-like tunnels. And Yeshayahu HaMelech, so a few decades before the Churban HaBayis, he foresaw that the time has arrived. So he told the Kehanim to bring the Aron underneath the Har HaBayis into the tunnels, and that's where it is. Ad Hayom Hazeh, till Mashiach comes once again. But in the second Beis Hamikdash there wasn't. There was only the Evan Shesiyah. When the first Beis Hamikdash, when the Aron and the Luchos were in the Kodesh Kadashim, Hoisa HaShechina, so the Shechina, Shehi Malchus da Atzilus, which is Malchus da Atzilus, Shehi Bechinas Gili Erin Seiv Baruch Hu, which, as we explained, Malchus of Atzilus is the revelation of the Erin Sof, the revelation of the Erin Sof into creation. You have the Erin Sof itself, but Malchus is the Gili of the Erin Sof. You have Hashem himself, but the Gili, the revelation of the Erin Sof, the energy which is revealed into the world, it's all condensed in Malchus, in the Shechina. So with Sheira Sham, it was present there, Umulubeshes, Ba'aseres Hadibres, and it was present, it was enclosed in the Aseres Hadibres, B'yeser Se'es V'yeser Az, with much more power and much more strength, B'gili Rav V'atzum, a much greater revelation and a much more powerful revelation, Yeser Migiluya, even more so than its revelation Behichalis Kodesh Kadashim Shalamayla, than its revelation in the chambers, the spiritual chambers of Kodesh Kadashim, Lamaila Ba'ilum Asal Yonim, the higher worlds. Reuven asks, how is that possible?
They didn't have Torah. They have Torah up there also. Yeah, the Torah Hadibros too.
So the Alter Rebbe explains, Ki Aseres Hadibros. No, the Aseres Hadibros are not in the higher worlds. In the higher world, you have in the world of Bri, you have the Talmud. In the world of Yitzhira, you have the Mishnah. And in the world of and the world of Asi, you have the Mikra. But Aseres Hadibros was in the Kodesh HaKadashim. What is unique about the Aseres Hadibros? The Aseres Hadibros and Klalos HaTorah Kula. The whole Torah is encapsulated within the Aseres Hadibros. Hashgacha Pratis, we're in the preparation stage for Matan Torah, when we read it, and Shavuos, which is the Yom Tov when we didn't receive the Luchos on Shavuos, but the Aseres Hadibros were given on Shavuos, and the Luchos shortly thereafter. We know that there are 620 letters in the Aseres Hadibros, and that's because one letter for every one of the 613 mitzvahs, and the 7 for the 7 mitzvahs which are the Rabbanan. And we also know that the Rasag, in the Sefer, the Azharis, so the Rasag says that every single mitzvah, all the 613 mitzvahs are merumas in the Aseres Hadibros, and the Rasag actually points and says, he goes through all the 613 mitzvahs and shows the source of every single mitzvah in the Aseres Hadibros. So the Aseres Hadibros contains the energy, it contains within it, encapsulated the entire Torah. I think we talked about this in the past. There's the idea of klal uprat. Right, I said that beside you going. Yeah, so klal uprat, the idea of klal uprat means everything in Torah comes originally as a klal. It comes as in a condensed form, in an embryonic form. It all comes like the seed, which contains within it all the tree and all the fruit that emerged from it. And then everything, thank you very much, and then everything emerges in prat. Just like we said, you have all the energy from Hashem, the Shechina, it comes as a klal, and then every single creation receives its energy, the prat. The same thing is in Torah. So we can imagine that the entire energy of the entire Torah is condensed in the Aseres Hadibros. So Aseres Hadibros isn't just another part of the Torah. It's a very, very lofty part of the Torah because it contains within it, condensed, the energy of the whole Torah. In fact, every word of Torah that, besides for the Aseres HaDibros, and every mitzvah, and every halacha, and every mishnah, and every sugya and gemara, and every word in Tanya, because everything is there. So it's all included in there. So every single part of Torah is a prat, is a detail. It's a detail of the energy of the Torah. In Aseres HaDibros, it's all there in condensed form. In fact, it's brought down. It says, when Mashiach comes, the Navi says that Torah chadasha me'iti teitze, that there will be a new Torah that will come when Mashiach comes. But it's brought down in Chassidus, chas v'shalom, to say that it will be a new Torah. Because there's no new Torah. There's only one Torah, and there's only one Matan Torah. And as the saying goes, at zweite Mal, that Matan Torah in design. There is no second Matan Torah. So what does it mean a Torah Chadasha? That means the Mashiach will reveal completely new dimensions in Torah that were hidden, concealed beforehand. And it's going to be so much and so amazing that it's going to look like a Torah Chadasha. It's a new Torah. But where is it coming from? It's coming from Torah. So where is it condensed in? In the Aseres HaDibros. Ultimately, everything is condensed in the Aseres HaDibros. So the whole Torah is in Aseres HaDibros. Where does the Torah come from? The Nafka, the Torah emerges Megoi Chachma Ilah. Torah comes from the Chachma Ilah, comes from the Chachma of Atzilus. The Le'ela Ma'alma Desgalia, which is so much higher than the Shechina, which is called Alma Desgalia, the revealed world. Remember in Perek Nun Aleph, we talked, or Perek Nun Beis, we said how the Shechina is called Alma Desgalia. It's called the revealed world because it is, it is the energy from Hashem which is revealed in this world. The Torah is above and beyond that. So the Aseres HaDibros is the entire Torah condensed as it is in Chachma D'Atzilus. Yes, the Torah originates in Chachma D'Atzilus, but the Torah ultimately made its way down here into this world. Says the Alter Rebbe, in order, when it came time for the Aseres HaDibros to be engraved in the physical stones, Lo yarda mimadrega lamadrega. The Aseres HaDibros, as it is inscribed in the Luchos, in the Aron, it did not come down one level after another, the way that the worlds come down. Remember, we learned until this physical world. We learned the Torah comes down level after level. So you have the Torah as it is, remember in Atzilus, that's Kabbalah, and then the Torah comes down a level to the world of Yitzirah, and then you have the Talmud. The Torah comes down another level to the world of Yitzirah, and then you have the Mishnah comes down. But the Aseres HaDibros, as they are inscribed in the Luchos, they did not come down. They went straight.
Express.
Thank you very much. How do we know that the Aseres HaDibros, as they are engraved in the Luchos, it didn't come down level after level until it arrived at the level of Elam Hazah? Because this world, it behaves in a way of Teva. You know that this world runs according to the rules of nature. The Luchos defied nature. There were stones that were formed by Hashem. They weren't a product of this world. The writing on the Luchos. The writing was written by Hashem. Beyond the Teva of this world. As we know, that the Luchos were miraculous. The Gemara says in the Masechtas Megillah that the Mem v'Samach of the Luchos were Benes HaYoimdim. Mem and Samach of the Luchos stood with a Nes. Why? Because we know it says the Luchos were Mizehim Ksuvim, that they were Charus ala Luchos, that the Luchos was engraved. And the words went through and through.
But you can see it. But you see it the other side.
One second. Yeah. So if words go through and through, the first problem that you have is that if a Mem and a Samach, the middle, if it's engraved, the middle would fall down. The middle wouldn't stand.
What's the middle?
Try taking. They're suspended midair. The middle of the Mem, the middle of the Samach, the middle of the. I'm talking about the Mem Soifi, the Shlosh Mem. So you think about it, if you engrave into a piece of paper, you engrave a Mem.
Yeah.
right, like this. So it would be, if it was a samach, it would be a circle. You just have a circle in the paper, and if it was a mem, you'd be a square. In order to make it a mem or a samach, you have to have the middle. How's the middle standing? So that's benes.
That's a nets, I see.
That's number one. And if you engrave but not through and through, so then you engrave and the middle stands. But if you engrave through and through,
The middle disappears.
the middle would disappear. But it stood there in a way of nest. But moreover, as someone mentioned,
When you look the other side,
when you look to the other side, then
be inverted.
the writing would be inverted, would be backwards, right? But the nest was
they were the same.
that it was the same.
was
Not
the
only
right
that, but the Yerushalmi says that actually it was engraved from all 6 sides. Not only front and back, but the luchos were engraved on all 6 sides.
Yeah.
On all 6 sides. And through. In all directions. And in every way you looked at it, you were reading it straight. Which we realize this is completely beyond nature. And when we're talking about beyond nature, we mean beyond nature in a way that we can't even conceive. For example, Kriyas Yamsuf is beyond nature, but we can conceive Kriyas Yamsuf. We can imagine. If I ask you to imagine in your head, what does Kriyas Yamsuf look like? Well, you can't do Kriyas Yamsuf, and you don't know how it can be done. But you can imagine what it looks like, water to split, and there's dry ground in the middle. You know, Makas Svardeya is a miracle. But you can conceive it. In other words, in the picture books, they make drawings of Makas Svardeya. They make drawings of Kriyas Yamsuf. But try making a drawing of the Luchis. The mem and samach benes, that you can imagine. You can conceive the middle standing. But the idea of being able to read through and through from every single side and at the same time you're reading it straight, it's a miracle of inconceivable proportions.
600 people was seeing it. It means it was in the middle. Whoever stand here, whoever stand there, everybody have to see it.
You're talking about where?
600,000.
When did 600,000 people see it?
By Muhammad al-Sinai.
No. Ma'am Hasina, there were no luchas. Hashem just said the Ser Sadibris. Moshe went up and they came down with the luchas 40 days later and he broke them. Then it came down again with them.
The second luchas were made the same way.
The second luchas, the Eibishter inscribed them. Moshe engraved the rock, but he took them up, but it was empty, blank rock, and Hashem inscribed them in the same way. So, there's also another significance to the fact that the luchos were engraved. This is something which is discussed in many places in Chassidus, that when there's a Sefer Torah, we know that actually in the Aron there was also a Sefer Torah. It's machlokes in the Gemara, whether it was in the Aron itself or whether it was on a shelf which was right outside the Aron. But in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Aron or right next to the Aron, there's also a Sefer Torah. A Sefer Torah we know is written parchment and ink. What's the difference when you have parchment and ink as opposed to when you have something which is engraved?
Ink can disappear.
So ink can disappear.
Engraved, stay forever.
Why can ink disappear?
It oxidized. I
From
saw
the air, from
Sefer
the-
Torah.
Because when you write something on a piece of paper or on a parchment with ink, so you have two different entities and they're coming together. They're uniting. But at the end of the day, you have two different entities that are coming together. And therefore the possibility remains also for the words to disappear. Why? Because it's not one substance. The ink and the parchment remain two substances. Even when the ink, even before it disappears, even while it's on the parchment, at the end of the day, it's the ink and the parchment are two different substances. However, they're
Stick to it.
yeah, they're bonded. They're bonded in a very powerful way. It's maybe very difficult to. Even if theoretically you had an ink that you couldn't erase because it bonded so well that it couldn't erase, it doesn't change the fact that the ink and the parchment are two separate substances. On the other hand, when you engrave, there aren't two substances, there's only one substance. The words become part of the rock. Not to become one with the rock, they're part of the rock. And what is the significance of this? The Torah begins as Hashem's Chachma. The Torah begins in the world of Atzilus, and Chachma and Atzilus are actually even higher than that. It begins as Hashem's Chachma. And then as the Torah enters the world, remember we learned, the Torah takes on various forms, and every one of these forms is like a mashal. We spoke about how Torah is called the Mashal HaKadmoini, because every single one of the forms that Torah takes on is a garment which is enclothing the pure wisdom, the pure Chachma of Hashem, which is within it. So in our world, the garments are physical garments. The Torah, that's why the Torah talks about physical things. In the higher worlds, the Torah has spiritual garments. But ultimately, the Torah enters different garments. And earlier on in Tanya, in Perek Hey, the Alter Rebbe says that when you're learning Torah, it's like you're hugging the king. Hashem is the king, and you're hugging the king. And the Alter Rebbe says, when you're hugging a king, does it matter how many layers of clothing the king is wearing? You know, if is he wearing a jacket and a vest and a coat? Or is he wearing just a jacket? Or is he wearing a shirt? Is he wearing tzitzis on it? It doesn't make a difference. When you're hugging the king, the point is that you're hugging the king. It doesn't make a difference how many garments the king is wearing. So the same thing is when we learn Torah, even though the Torah is in garments, but still, when we're learning Torah, enclosed in those garments is Hashem, is the king, is the Chachma of Hashem, and therefore ultimately we're hugging the king. That's the Torah as it enters the world. As the Torah enters the world, it assumes garments. It unites with those garments. The Hashem's wisdom unites with those garments. When we're learning Torah through the garments, so we're uniting, we're talking connecting to Hashem. But then there's the Torah in its purest form without any garments. That's represented by the luchos which were engraved. Not two things that are coming together like parchment and ink.
Like a levush.
Right. It's not like you have Hashem's chachma and the garment that come together, but rather the luchos represent the pristine chachma of Hashem as it is in the Aseret HaDibros, that incredibly condensed, purest form of Torah was in the luchos, and as it came into this world, it didn't enter the world on its terms. It's the Chachma of Hashem, which is beyond worlds. It's from the Alma, much, much higher than the Shechina. Much, forget it, not only it's higher than the world, it's higher even than the Shechina. It's higher even than the energy of Hashem, which enters the world. This is the Chachma of Hashem, and in the luchos it comes direct, in Olam Hazeh Agashmi. And that's not the way in the higher worlds. In the higher worlds, the Oyer comes down, the Shechina comes down, and every single level the Shechina enters the Torah as the Torah comes down. Torah comes down, Shechina comes in it. Torah comes down in another world, Shechina comes down in it. But in this world, because in the luchos you had, because in the Kodesh HaKadoshim you had the luchos, which is the Torah in its purest form. So here we have the highest level of Shechina entering the world through the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Again, this was in the time in times of the Bayis Rishon.
How do we access something like this?
We'll see it. We'll see that. We'll see the answer to that question as we go along.
Yeah, all right.
But let's move on. So let's start again from V'haluchos ma'aser elikim hema. The luchos are the work of Hashem. V'amichtav michtav elikim hu. The writing on the luchos, the first one line is v'amichtav. V'amichtav michtav elikim hu. The writing on the luchos was engraved by Hashem. L'mayla mateva shel Olam Hazeh Agashmi. And both the actual luchos and the writing on the luchos completely transcended this world. Hanishma ba'aretz hashchina. Our world, where does our world come from? It comes from the ray of the Shekhinah. Shebeheichel Kodesh Kadashim Da'asiyah. Our world, the nature of our world comes from the godliness, the lukus, the energy, which originates in the Kodesh HaKadashim of the world of Asiyah. Shemimena, because from there, from the spiritual world of Asiyah, Nimshach Eir V'chayis Lo Elam Asiyah, the whole world of Asiyah receives its energy. Shagam Elam Hazeh B'chlali, and also our physical world receives its energy from there. So the idea of Teva doesn't only start in our world, in our physical world. In the spiritual world of Asiyah, there also you have nature, spiritual nature. But the luchos are above and beyond physical nature and spiritual nature. Ella, rather, Bechinis Chachma Ilah Datzilus. Chachma Ilah Vatzilus. Shiklalos HaTorah, which is the whole Torah encapsulated, Shebeyud HaDibros, in the Aseret HaDibros. Nislapsha b'malchus da atzilus u'debriya levadan. Chachma of atzilus enters malchus of atzilus and bria alone. V'hein levadan, and they alone. Malchus of atzilus and malchus of bria. Ham yuchades ba'erein seif shebetoichan, which are united with the Ein Sof which is in it. Hein hanekrois b'shem Shechina, they are the Shechina Hashoira b'kodesh kadashim debayis rishain. They are the Shekhinah which is in the Kodesh Kadashim of the first Beis HaMikdash, Aideya Slapshusa B'Yud HaDibreis HaHakukes Beluches Sheba'aren B'Nes, through the Yud Aseres HaDibreis which were engraved in the Luches in the Aren by way of miracle, Umaisa Elikim Chaim, and through the act of the living God, which Alter Rebbe points out, who Alma Diskasya, according to Kabbalah, Elikim Chaim is a reference to Alma Diskasya Hamekanen Ba'ilam Habriya, which in the world of Briya, Kenoid Al Yedechein, as is known to those who know Kabbalah. Okay, so we need to hear a little explanation. In Chassidus it's explained that there are two ways that something can be present somewhere. One is called hislapshus, and one is called maiver. Slapshus means when something is literally enclosed in something, it fits there, it belongs there, it comes down to something on its terms. And then there is something called derech maiver, by way of, it just passes through, but it doesn't really belong there. An example that's brought down in Chassidus for this is when a person writes. So when a person, imagine a big chacham who comes up with a brilliant idea, and he sits down and writes the idea on a piece of paper. So the wisdom right now is going from the mind onto the paper by way of the hand. So does the hand understand the wisdom?
No. It's just a conduit.
It's a conduit, it's a vehicle. So in the brain, the seichel is bihislapshus. In the brain, the seichel is there and the brain gets it. It's on the terms of the brain. The brain actually grasps what's going on. And in the hand, the seichel is just going through it, but it's not on its terms. So Alter Rebbe is saying over here, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim you had the Aseres HaDibris, which is really Chachma D'Atzilus. That's the original origin of Torah. That's what you have in the Luchos. How far? That's the level of oir that was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the first Beis HaMikdash. However, that oir came down not in the way of hislapshus, but in the way of maiver, and it stopped. It stopped by Malchus Debriya. So the Chachma D'Atzilus, which is where the Torah originates from, it goes down in a way of maiver till Malchus Debriya, and from there straight into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the oir, the level of oir is Chachma D'Atzilus, because it's not processed by the lower worlds. It's not contained. It comes down and through a vehicle and by Malchus Debriya, and as it is in Malchus Debriya, that's how it enters the Luchos which are in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So bottom line is, what do we have over here? Is that the Shekhinah, which was in the Bayis Rishain, was a tremendous, tremendous level. It was the oir of Chachma of Atzilus, was the oir of Torah, which is infinitely higher even than the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah comes into it, the Shekhinah of Malchus D'Atzilus comes into it, and it comes down, in other words, it comes down somewhat, not in a way of being processed, but it comes down until Malchus of Bria, and from there it enters directly into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So by now we already have the answer to our question, which we asked in the beginning of Perek Nun. What does it mean that there's the idea of Ashras HaShechina? What does it mean that the Shechina is in one place more than the other? And by now we know that the Kodesh HaKadoshim was the nerve center of the world, so that's where the Shechina was present. But not only the Shechina as it comes down through the worlds, and finally the filtered level of the Shechina as it enters this world, but we're talking about a very, very high level of Shechina that was present in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the energy of the world, every single creation receives this energy from the Shechina, which was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Beis HaMikdash.
There's no Beis HaMikdash.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out.
So we get the energy from that.
We will find that out. How about the second Beis HaMikdash? Before we get to today, let's talk about the second Beis HaMikdash. 3 lines from the top of page 148. In the second Beis HaMikdash, there were no Aron, there was no Luchis. Amar Razal. So Chazal said about the Baal Shem, the Gemara says in Masechtas Yuma, Shaloi Hoisa Shechina Sheira Bay. The Shechina wasn't there. That's what it says. So the Shechina wasn't in the Baal Shem. The Shechina was one of the 5 things that were missing. The obvious question is, the Shechina wasn't there.
Where do you get the Chiyas?
Sorry?
Where do you get the Unika from?
Besides the fact that where do you get the Chayis and Unika, it remained the holiest place in the world. Only the Kohen Gadol was allowed to enter there one time a year, on Yom Kippur. What do you mean what do you mean the Shechina wasn't there? What made it holy?
The Shechina is there when people learn Torah. How could that be that it's not there in the base of people?
When people learn Torah, we're going to get to that later. We're going to get to it later. But right now we're talking about Baal Shem. We know that the...
So how come why was he barred going in?
What was so special?
Restricted only for Yom Kippur.
If the Shechina wasn't there, then what made the Beis HaMikdash special? What made the Kodesh HaKadoshim special? Why was it that the only Kohen Gadol was allowed to go in there once a year? What's this all about? So Alter Rebbe explains, Pirush, what does that mean? Madrega Shechina she'isa sheira bebayis Rishon. The level of Shechina that was in the first Beis HaMikdash wasn't the Beis HaMikdash. In the first Beis HaMikdash you had Shalei Kedarech Ishtal Shlosa Ilmus. Remember we said in the first Beis HaMikdash, it didn't come down all the way. It was an express of Chachma Datzilus, and it went by way of Maivir until Malchus de Bria, and then straight into, it skipped the world of Yitzir and the world of Asiya, it skipped entirely. It was the Chachma of Atzilus as coming through the vehicle of Malchus of Bria, which is a ridiculously high madriga. Allah, but B'Bayis Sheni in the second Beis HaMikdash, he says Sheira, there was a Shechina there, but Kederach Ishtalshlus v'Yislapshus, in the normal way of the chaining down, and the coming down, Malchus Datzilus as it enters, but Malchus de Bria, the Bria Malchus of Bria enters, Malchus de Yitzira, the Yitzira Beichel Kedesh Kadashim Da'asiyah. Malchus of Yitzira enters the Kedesh Kadashim of the spiritual world of Asiyah. The Kodesh Kadashim Da'asiyah hay mislabish be Kodesh Kadashim Beis HaMikdash Shalamata. The Kodesh Kadashim of Asiyah that was entered the Beis HaMikdash down here. V'shar Sabay HaShechina, and there was the Shechina there. Malchus the Yitzira Hamulubeshes be Kodesh Kadashim Da'asiyah. The level of Malchus Da'asiyah, the Shechina as it is in the world of Yitzira, as it enters the Kodesh Kadashim of the world of Asiyah. But I want you to note,
but it's not in the Luchas no more.
There were no Luchas there.
So where did it reside, the Shechina? In
the room, yeah.
Without no Aron, without no Luchas.
Right. So there still was a skip over here, because usually to enter this world, you'd have Malchus of Yitzira entering the Kodesh HaKadashim of the world of Asiya, Haruchnis, and then Malchus of the spiritual world of Asiya should enter the Kodesh HaKadashim of our world. But that didn't happen over here. Even in the second Beis HaMikdash, there was a bypass. The Shechina, as it was in the Kodesh HaKadashim of the spiritual world of Asiya, directly entered the Kodesh HaKadashim of the second Beis HaMikdash. Not that the Kodesh HaKadashim of the spiritual world of Asiya went down into Malchus of the spiritual world of Asiya. And then from Malchus of the spiritual world of Asiya into the Kodesh HaKadashim of our world, because there's the spiritual Asiya and the physical Asiya. But the energy that was in the spiritual Kodesh HaKadashim of Asiya directly bypassed the entire spiritual world of Asiya and entered our world in the Kodesh HaKadashim of the second Beis HaMikdash.
There's a spiritual world of Asiya.
Yes, which is our spiritual source. V'lachein, and therefore, let's move on a little more. V'lachein lo yhoya rashoi shum adam. That's why no person was allowed to enter the Kodesh HaKadashim. Levad Kohen Gadol will be a Yom Kippur. Besides for the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. How about once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed? Mishachar Beis HaMikdash. That we'll talk about next week. But right now we have the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash, so we can understand. Imagine if you have all the energy that exists in this world, all the energy for this world was condensed even in the second Beis HaMikdash. Was in the Kodesh HaKadashim. We can understand the tremendous kedusha that was there, which is why only the Kohen Gadol was allowed to go in. In the first Beis HaMikdash, there you had not only the energy of this world, there you had the energy of Chachma Datzilus as it was in the world of Bria, as it came down through the world of Bria. So the first Beis HaMikdash, the kedusha was beyond belief. The second Beis HaMikdash also, again, it was the nerve center of the entire world. It's like, example we gave once, right? You have a nuclear power plant, and from the nuclear power plant, you have wires coming out to every single, so you put in your microwave here, and your toaster oven over here, and you plug in your electric car over here, and your phone charger over here. So that's the same thing is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that was the nuclear plant of the world. Except nuclear plant, imagine times how many. And from there, every single little entity received its energy. But the Shekhinah was there. The whole Shekhinah, the whole nerve center of the entire world was there.
I mean, it resided in the Luchas by
In Bayis Rishon, but even in Bayis Sheni. In other words, there was Shekhinah in Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Just in Bayis Rishon, it was a much higher level of Shekhinah than it was in Bayis Sheni. But ultimately, even in Bayis Sheni, you had over there the Shekhinah as it was in Chabad of the world, the spiritual world of Asiya, which is mind blowing. The month of Kedusha that was there. Again, everything's relative. Relative to Bayis Rishon, the Gemara says the Bayis Sheni there was no Shekhinah, because relative to the Madrega of Kedusha that there wasn't the Bayis Rishon, it was much lower. Yeah. But relative to the highest that's everywhere else in the world, the energy, the Kedusha that's there, the Shekhinah that's there, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim is a much higher level.
Is it Kodesh, or where did you take this?
No, it's brought down in Kisvei Rizal. Obviously the Alter explains it, but these inyanim are taken from the Kisvei Rizal. Mashkracha Pratis, so this week is the week of Parshas B'chukaisai. And the word B'chukaisai is related to the words of Hakika. Hakika, which is the engraving on a luchas.
Engraving in a luchas.
So that's Mashkracha Pratis. And this idea of Hakika, the Maila of Hakika, which we have in the luchas, which is that something, it's not two entities, but it's one entity. We find this area in many different places in Torah, including especially our parsha. It's the name of our parsha. I want to talk about it for a few moments. We're talking about the luchis. The maya of the luchis is that they're chakukais, and this is mamish, the nekudah of this week's parsha. So first of all, we know that there are three different types of mitzvahs. In general, there's eidos, and there's chukim, and there's mishpatim. Mishpatim are the mitzvahs that are rational. As Chazal say, that if the Torah would not have been given, so we would know tznius from a cat, we'd know gezel we'd know not to steal from an amala, from an ant. And there are many mitzvahs of the Torah which are logical, common sense. Those are mishpatim. Mitzvahs that had the Torah not given them, seichel would still dictate that we should do them. And then there are mitzvahs which are eidos. Eidos are mitzvahs that we would not be doing, if not for the fact that the Torah tells us to do them, we would not be doing it. We would not, if the Torah wouldn't say that we should eat matzah on Tesvav Nissan, chances are no one would think of that idea. If the Torah wouldn't tell us to put up a mezuzah, no one would think of that idea either. But at the same time, once the Torah tells us these mitzvahs, these are mitzvahs which are eidos, they're testimonials, they testify to either the fact that there's an Eibishter in the world, there's different miracles that happen, they're logical. Again, they're not something we would think of on our own, but in hindsight, once we're commanded about them, they're logical. And then there are the mitzvahs that are chukim, and chukim that are mitzvahs that defy logic, they transcend logic, whether it's a mitzvah like, obviously the ultimate chuk is paraduma, but then you have other mitzvahs, you have shatnez, and you have kashrus. According to the Ramban, all the arayos are chukim. You have many different mitzvahs that are chukim. Tumatara, whole tumatara is a chuk. Chuk, hakika. What's the connection between chuk and hakika? We're talking here about hakika, the idea of engraving. What's the connection between dafka, this category of mitzvah, the category of mitzvahs of chukim, with the idea of hakika? The answer is that we know, we had it in the Perek, in this Perek, the Iraisa mechochma nafkas. We learned it today. HaTorah kula din nafka megoy chochmeila. What is nafka? What does it mean, the nafka?
Learned. Means comes from.
Nafka means
Came
to,
from.
it emerges from.
Immersion.
So Torah mechachma nafkas means that the Torah emerges from chachma. When you say something emerges from there, it means that really
Chachma was.
Torah is really higher than that. It only emerges from chachma. But Torah really, where does Torah really rooted in? Is in Hashem's ratzon.
So they can be.
Torah is really rooted in Hashem's ratzon, which is higher than chachma. Every mitzvah really starts off as Hashem's ratzon without any reason. Certain mitzvahs, for reasons known only to Hashem, Hashem decided that these mitzvahs also should be logical. But even those mitzvahs that are logical, that's not why Hashem commanded the mitzvah. Hashem didn't command the mitzvah because of the reason. They started off because as Hashem's ratzon. And then afterwards, reasons developed for them. They entered chachma, and reasons developed for them, but they're not the real reason for the mitzvah. The real reason we do a mitzvah is because Hashem wanted. Why did Hashem want? Because that's what He wants. That's what He wants. By way of example, like all the sciences, they're busy explaining natural phenomena in this world. So, for example, science will tell you, why do you have two eyes? Why not one eye? Because if you only had one eye,
You don't have depth.
then you wouldn't have depth perception, right?
Peripheral 3 eyes.
And peripheral.
So is that the reason why you have two eyes? Now, if we had one eye or three eyes, science would explain why we had one eye or three eyes. In other words, they examine the facts. The facts remain facts whether or not they make sense. And once, in hindsight, they look at them and say, what kind of logic is there to them? But the logic follows the fact. The logic is not the reason for the fact. The same thing is in all areas of science. Science looks at all these different types of phenomena and they give reasons for them. But do you really think, and the scientists, for example, they'll explain the entire human body logically, but do you think that if the scientist sat down with a blank piece of paper and you tell him, he never saw a human being, okay, draw for me what the perfect human being is logically, you think they would have come with, they would end up with what we look like today? Of course not. Because if logic can go many different directions, ultimately you start with the fact. Here's the fact. Now let's explain the fact. And the same thing is when it comes to mitzvahs. We start with the fact. The fact is that this is Hashem's ratzon. Certain mitzvahs then entered chachma also, and they became logical. Certain mitzvahs never entered chachma. And even as they come all the way down here into this world, they remain pristine, pure.
Like the lupus.
They remain pure, exactly, ratzon Hashem. And that's why they're called choik, chukim. Why? Because a choik is chakika. Not that you have two things. A mitzvah which is rational, you have Hashem's ratzon, and that combines with the logic, with the seichel. So that's like writing ink on parchment. And then you have mitzvahs which are the level of chukim, and those mitzvahs are like chakika. There's only one thing. All you have over here is Hashem's ratzon. And then this week's parsha begins, Im b'chokaisai teilechu. And as Rashi says, Shatiyu amelim b'Torah. Shatiyu amelim b'Torah. And that points to the idea, the way we're supposed to learn Torah. That when you learn Torah, in a way of amelim, when you harv in Torah, the point is that you should become one thing with the Torah. And not even like parchment and paper, which become united. But when a Yid learns Torah properly, in a way of bichukaisai, which is really the question is why would amelim b'Torah be alluded to in the word bichukaisai? The Torah is havana vasaga. Torah is understanding. Torah is seichel. And a choik is the opposite. Choik is something you don't understand. So why is amelim b'Torah referred to bichukaisai? Because this is telling us when we're learning Torah, besides the fact that we have to learn Torah with Kabbalah also and do it because Hashem wants, because it's the ratzon of Hashem, but the ultimate limud HaTorah is in a way when the Torah becomes absolutely one with the person who's learning it, not two things. Many times, unfortunately, you have instances where you have a person who's learning Torah, and you have the person and you have the Torah, and the Torah doesn't impact the person. There's a story about a chassid who went to Yechidus to the Alter Rebbe, and he told the Alter Rebbe, he had learned a lot of Torah. He went to the Alter Rebbe, all the Mesechtas he learned, and all the Paskim, and the Yerushalmi, the Medrashim, and the Alter Rebbe listened, and when he finished his list, the Alter Rebbe said, this works in Yiddish, in English it doesn't work so well. He said, no, you tell me all about the Torah was du hast gelernt, aber sag mir, was hat Torah dir euch gelernt? Which means you tell me about the Torah that you learned, but what did Torah teach you? You learned a lot of Torah, but what did Torah teach you? In Yiddish, it works well with the words. And yeah, you can have a person who learns a lot of Torah, but it doesn't. The Torah didn't become one with the person. There's me, and there's my perspective, and my way, and my midas rois, and the rewards that the Torah talks about over here in this week's parsha, which comes from Tiyamela Matayram, it has that in order. You have to have b'chukesa. You have to be like the luchas, not even like two things that come together to become one, but that the person mamish becomes ein zach, becomes one thing with the Torah. And then this also explains something which is interesting in this week's parsha. A big problem which many of them are Farshmer, the Barbanel talks about it, and the Kli Yakar talks about it. That this week's parsha talks all about the rewards that we receive for following the Torah. Okay. It also talks about the punishments that we receive for not following the Torah, but also in the beginning, that if we follow if we're for Amelim at Torah, and if we do what's right, then we get all these physical rewards, and everything. And a lot of the Mefarshim wonder. It's a double wonder. First of all, why are physical? That's what we get. That's the reward for Torah mitzvahs. Is all these physical rewards that we get. Doesn't the Rambam say that everything in this world is only? So that's Pirkei Avos. The Rambam says that the true reward is Ne'elam Haba. Any reward we get in this world is only that to remove any impediments that we have from learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. But if you learn this week's parsha, you read it very simply. It's saying if you do this, this will happen. So number one, why, in terms of reward, why is the reward that the Torah promises physical? L'chayra, what's physical reward? The spiritual reward is so much greater.
Yeah.
And on a deeper level, you can ask, why is the Torah even promising us reward in the first place? We had in Pirkei Avos, Al tiyu kavad ma'msham shena sarav manas l'kabel pras, but rather we should serve the Eibishter shleim mas l'kabel pras. Why is the Torah over here promising us all this reward when b'chlal it seems to be a distraction from what an emes and what the truest avodas Hashem is supposed to be? So what are you going to say? You're going to taina. Okay, but not everyone's on that level. And the Gemara says that Leilam Yulmid Adam Shleilishma, right? So maybe the Torah is talking to people who, they're on a low level, they're in the beginning of the Aveda, and therefore they need to be promised reward.
Have incentive.
And that's why the reward has to be physical reward, because if you're going to tell a person you're going to get reward in El Maba, maybe someone who's on a very lowly spiritual level is going to say, I'm not interested in that. So the Torah is addressing the lowest common denominator and saying, I'm going to give you a physical reward. That is somewhat of an answer, but it's difficult, because at the end of the day, the Torah is not addressed only to people on a low spiritual level. The Parsha B'chukoisai is talking to everyone, including people on a high spiritual level. And what are they supposed to make of the fact that the Torah is offering physical reward for mitzvahs? Why is the Torah offering reward? And if you have reward, physical reward, we're going to get rain. We're going to have Eitz Asada, Yit and Piriya. Like what's that's what the whole point of me learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is that I should get some money. That's what it's all about.
You can make money differently.
From a Baal Madriga, I laugh at that, right? People, the Rambam says when he talks about the Elam Haba and Mashiach, he says, "Lo nisavu hachachamim v'nevim l'meisa Mashiach." That the Chacham and Nevim, they didn't want Mashiach because they're going to be rich or because of it. They want the Pasha to be able to sit and learn Torah and to connect to Hashem and to absorb divine wisdom. And here the Torah is promising us all these physical things. And the same thing, by the way, is when it comes to Mashiach. There are Mari Chazal that are filled with different prophecies when Mashiach comes and how amazing it will be. The trees will grow fruit every single day, and there will be you'll be able to pick.
Iloni Srak.
Even Iloni Srak will have fruit. But more than that, there will be gluskois, there will be cookies and cake growing on trees. That's what it says. And really, is that what Mashiach is all about? Is that really what? And candies growing on the trees?
It's just to see you that you don't have to do it.
I understand. So one way you're looking at it, okay, so it's going to take away from us all our distractions. But if you look at these Mamari Chazal, it doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem that it's like saying, okay, all these things are going to make life easier. It sounds very much like in this week's Parsha, we're talking about a reward. And the question is, number one, why do we even need the reward? Why does Chazal tell us about all this reward? And number two, if you have reward, why don't you talk about the spiritual rewards? Isn't that what we're talking about? The Rebbe explains that the fact that spiritual service, that Torah mitzvahs, that for that we get spiritual reward is not a chiddush. The Torah doesn't even have to tell us that. That's obvious. When you serve Hashem, and that's an avodah ruchni, it's a spiritual service, of course you're going to get a spiritual reward. In other words, the fact that after 120 a person who learns Torah and does mitzvahs goes to Gan Eden and gets to enjoy spiritual, that's the obvious. But we say about Torah, ki hem chayenu v'erech yameinu. That means that everything comes from Torah, including Olam Hazeh Hagashmi. So Torah has to reflect itself in every single area, including the physical. If a person learns Torah and he only benefits from it spiritually, but not physically, that means that there is a disconnect, there's a gap, there's a distance between Torah and the physical. Torah remains in the realm of the spiritual, and it doesn't impact the physical. And what does B'chukaisai mean? Going back to what we're talking about. B'chukaisai means that when a person becomes one with Torah, because the person is Shetiyu Amelim B'Torah, when a person Taka becomes one with Torah, then the entirety of the person becomes one with Torah. And then the benefits of Torah are not only spiritual but physical also. Why? Just like when a person is happy. Happy is a spiritual emotion. But what happens? You dance. You don't just dance spiritually, you dance physically. Why? Because that permeates your entire being. The same thing is, if you become B'chukaisai, Oisis HaHakika, when a person learns Torah to the point that they become one with Torah, then there is no part of you that isn't impacted by Torah. So when the Torah is telling you about the physical reward, it's not about an incentive. The Torah is telling you the result of you learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, the automatic, natural result is going to be that physically will be good for you. Why? Because Torah is the makar of all the brachas in this world, and therefore that's not limited to the spiritual, it also impacts the physical also. And the same thing is when Mashiach will come, when the whole world will be permeated by Torah. And then once again we'll have the luchas, charus al haluchas, cherus b'mal chamavas. Then also the physical in the world will also be the way it's supposed to be, like it was before the Chet Tzadas, before the world got messed up. Why? Because the Torah is the makar of all the brachas in the world, of brachas everywhere, and there isn't that disconnect between the Eibush there and the world, the spiritual and the physical. Our B'chukaisei, when we learn Torah and become one with the Torah, we bring about the unity of Hashem, the Torah, and the world, and therefore the impact is felt everywhere. So that is the idea of Hakika, the Luchas, as we're talking about in this Perek, how it impacts not only the way it was in the Luchas Nabeis HaMikdash, but it impacts our Avodah. Well, you have to realize that when we do mitzvahs in a way of Chukim, and when we learn Torah in a way of Hakika, and becoming one with us, we impact the whole world. And we make the whole world to become Hakika, one with the Torah, one with the Eibishter, and that automatically brings about brachas in Ruchnias and also Begashmis. Good Shabbat everyone.